You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And the lilacs are out, and the lily of the valley, and the robins are back. Oh joy, oh joy. Oh, well, they haven't nested yet, but he is in full splendorous red breast and stiff posture, hopping about inspecting corners and backdrops of crested ivy to see what might make a suitable scrim for a nest. And she presides and watches from a tree and looks quite pregnant. Oh joy, oh joy. Maybe there will be another nest, and maybe there will be eggs. Ow! It's been chilly and rainy, with intermittent, lusciously sunny, spring-like days. And today, our guest for the conversation is Lois Romano, a distinguished American journalist, author, and editor, known for her in-depth coverage of national politics and American political culture for major outlets, including the Washington Post and Politico. The biographer who gave us the Mary Todd Lincoln biography, An Inconvenient Widow, which will become, I predict, a definitive work. And if you want to get mouth-frothing angry at the patriarchy that conspired to so undo Mary Todd Lincoln, but still managed to fail, just stay tuned. I'll return in a moment after this brief message. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Lois Romano, welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm very glad that you're here.
Thank you for having me, Robin. I'm very excited to be doing this with you.
Well, you're not as excited as I am. I am so damn glad that you wrote this book. And I am in such a state of mouth-frothing rage about what was done to this woman. I can hardly articulate my anger. It's amazing that this book was not written years ago, 100 and some odd years ago, in fact. I mean, God, what was done to her. We're talking about Mary Todd Lincoln, and the book, of course, is called An Inconvenient Widow: The Torment, Trial, and Triumph of Mary Todd Lincoln. It's a big book. It's the kind that if you throw it at a male supremacist, he will keel over sideways. But it is absolutely wonderful. It's really stunning. How did you come to write this book? How did this manifest itself?
It came at me from multiple ways. I covered first ladies,
Right.
so I was somewhat intrigued by her over the years. In doing research, I was looking to see how first ladies were treated, and it was fairly obvious that she had been treated terribly. And I think my context at the time was Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton's in office, and she's being vilified left and right. And I was covering a lot of what she was doing. And so I sort of looked around, and I found that most first ladies got a pass, but Mary Todd Lincoln did not. And so I was intrigued by it. I was fortunate that when I went to talk to my agent about it, he was also very intrigued by her and was very interested, in particular, about how her son had her committed.
Yeah.
And when I started doing a little bit more research, it became so apparent to me that the book was more than just her son having her committed, that basically that the public perception of her that's been passed down, that we inherited, for 160 years,
Right.
was not really who she was.
No.
And if you could really pull back the layers in a lot of the research and archives, you could get a fuller picture. And that's really how I came to do what I I think of as a revisionist look at her.
Well, it's a good, damn good investigative reporters investigating, I mean, and that this hasn't been done before is amazing, amazing. It's not amazing because it was the 19th century, but since then it has not been the 19th century, all of it. And you'd think that some of the feminist historians, well, I'm not saying that
Well, let me just.
she's not saying that she was a feminist, but maybe they
Some
came.
did. Some tried to. I want to be clear. There was a woman, a famous historian in 1953, Ruth Painter Randall, who did a sympathetic piece on her.
Mhm.
But at the time, a lot of stuff wasn't available. Like since
Ah,
1953, a lot more information became available. About 35 years ago, Jean Baker did a piece, did a book, and some of the recent stuff by women, in my view, went a little too far.
uh-huh.
They tried to paint her as a feminist, and she wasn't exactly a feminist. She was
No,
independent minded.
yep.
She was educated,
She had
but
agency. She insisted
she
on it.
had, right, she had agency. She knew who she was, but she also was part of an era, um, domestic sphere, I think they called it, where she wanted to be a mom
That's right.
and she wanted to be a wife. And for example, she could have become involved in the suffrage movement, but she did not
I
because
know. I wondered about that. Yeah,
I
but
think she just didn't see herself as an activist.
right.
She saw herself, this was the traditional side of her, as boosting Lincoln to greatness.
Yes, they're all
And she
Lincoln.
did. And
Yeah.
she did.
Yes, she did. She saw him as president before he did. She
That's
saw,
correct.
and they all, I mean, when he said "we are elected," Mary, we are elected, he meant it. I mean, and she meant it when she referred to the Lincoln Party. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah. So she knew what she was doing, and but in her world and in her lifetime, it was all through him. And
Correct.
and let's face it, she picked a pretty amazing him,
And
but
nobody thought so at the time, though. Keep that in
no,
mind. Her
no, no,
family was like, "Whoa, what are you doing with him?" Stephen Douglas is a better catch.
that's right.
But she saw something special, and she also, in addition to the just the raw ambition and her feeling that the White House was her destiny, she also saw in him a kind man, and she had had a rough
Mhm.
childhood,
Yeah.
and she knew that he would be kind to her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it is extraordinary, and um the details of her life and what she did and what she actually did off stage, which you go into, whether it was visiting the soldiers and spending hours and hours and hours with them, and tending to them and tending to their wounds and feeding them at holidays, or whether it was, I mean, it's extraordinary. Her closest friend was a mixed race woman, and it's so moving. It's just she never stood a chance in a sense. She because you show very carefully how the best, the most courageous, the most well-meaning gestures were misinterpreted.
Yeah,
And,
part of the issue too was the war. So she was getting it
yeah,
from all sides. So she gets to the White House, and he's hated by half the country. I mean,
that's right.
he won a very narrow victory. He wasn't even on the ballot in a number of southern states, and so he arrives, and the South already hates him. States are seceding from the Union left and right, and by inheritance, they hate her,
That's right.
because she's aligned with him. So she already goes in, and the South is bitter because she's a Kentuckian, and which is a border state, yet she's married to Lincoln and supporting the Union. And then the Northerners didn't trust her. They just said, "Oh, well, she's a Southerner."
That's right.
So
And sometimes they thought she was a spy.
they thought
Even.
she was a spy. So she was getting it from both ends. So she enters the White House really under siege from all different places. And she did have some emotional issues, and she didn't handle it well. I
Yeah.
mean, we have to acknowledge that.
No, clearly she was obviously what would be known as a difficult woman.
Hmm.
She She took herself seriously. Part of her being a difficult woman was that she damn well took herself seriously, and carried herself seriously.
She was willful and she was opinionated.
That's right. So
Um,
those are nothing wrong with those. Then
no,
she sometimes tipped over into, deeper waters,
right.
with because of her insecurities, because she thought, was thought she wasn't beautiful enough, so she wanted to be fancy dressed, and so, I mean, you can just see through the measures that she took to be acceptable, and to be liked, and to be, followed, but and the way that she flowered when she felt she was, but
Exactly.
you
You've
know
nailed it. You've nailed it.
yeah, she just blossomed. But then if she wasn't being, lionized and admired, she would turn very bitter very fast.
Correct.
But the book also, I mean, where the book turns really, really, really dark. Of course, well, it starts with the children's dying, and I mean, she had her sons, and she kept losing them one after another. And before Lincoln, it was a tragic life. I mean, a normal anybody, without whether they had a mental challenges or not, would have caved under this life. But she pluckily forged on. I mean, and even when Robert, was her elder son, right? And that was
Hmm.
the
The oldest. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
put her through an insanity trial. I mean, that's amazing. That's just
Well,
amazing.
that's one of my favorite pieces of the book because he decides look, she was eccentric and he was very worried about his own image and
Yeah,
people gossiped about her. So she was shopping too much. And so everybody knew that she was shopping too much. She was in her own little world. And she was seeing spiritualists, which drove
right.
Rob crazy. And it was too much for him. And then he couldn't take her into his house because his wife and Mary didn't get along. And so he decides that he's terrified she's going to spend all her money because but here's the interesting thing, Robin, about the money. If he had done any at all due diligence, he would have realized she was not going into principal. She had all these bonds.
That's
She
right.
was just spending the interest. She
Yeah.
was never going to impoverish herself.
No.
But all of this drove him crazy. So he rigs this whole trial. And I know some male historians don't like when I say the way rigged, but he did. I mean,
No, he did.
he blindsided her. And then he goes on vacation. This is like my favorite thing. He figures he's got her tucked away and she's being quiet and complacent. And he's reading that as that she understands that she needs to be there, when in fact, just the opposite was true.
Hmm.
She was depressed and she didn't quite understand how she got there. So he goes on vacation. And the second he's gone, she reaches out to some lawyers
Right.
and basically gets herself out of there in 3 months.
I know.
It's an extraordinary story. And it just
Amazing.
showed how smart she was.
Yeah.
She was a brilliant woman and she knew
Yeah.
how to do it.
Yeah. In some other world and time, she would have been quite formidable in herself. You
I
know.
agree. She
I
could
mean,
have been a very powerful woman in another place and time.
that's right. I mean, and that chance was simply not available to her. I mean, her friendships with women are interesting, though. I mean, she took friendships where she could find them, and mostly they didn't betray her. Well, no, actually, mostly they did, but in many cases they didn't.
Well, they
And
didn't, except, I mean, the only one that I think really betrayed her was the seamstress.
yeah, well, that was the
But
biography.
the other women that she was more often than not move away from certain people if she thought they had betrayed her,
Yeah,
and she was very sensitive that way. And then some of the other women, I mean, she stayed friendly with them. I mean, she wore some people down, because she was
yeah,
at the end of her life, not early on, but she was needy. But the betrayal by the seamstress, who she considered one of her
Heckley.
closest, Elizabeth Keckley was very famous. That was very tragic. I mean, and I view that as, here's Mary, she's getting betrayed at every way she turned, right? I mean, her
Yeah,
son, Elizabeth Keckley, I mean, everywhere she turned, she gets slapped, and it's just tragic. It's very tragic.
yeah. Well, and it's also, I don't quite know how to put this. I mean, it's beneath her. It's
Right.
I mean, it's she. If you were going to take her on, at least take her on for some major something, policy things or what. But they they sort of nibbled and niggled at her
Right.
toes, and they brought her
She
down.
couldn't do anything. She couldn't, I mean,
Exactly,
right. She couldn't
exactly.
take a breath without, and she says that at one point. She says, I seem to be the scapegoat for everybody, the
Yeah,
North, the South, Washington. And she was right.
yeah. No, she was right, and it's just heartbreaking. Even who should be buried where, you
Yeah,
know?
that's another great story that they tried to
Wow.
take the power away from her of where he should be interred. And she didn't want him to go to Springfield, but she relented. But she said that she would relent under a couple of conditions. One is that it would be a tomb big enough to fit her two deceased sons,
Hmm.
and also, by extension, herself and her other son, and that also it would be at this very beautiful cemetery outside of Springfield.
Oak
And
Ridge.
they agree, Oak Ridge, right? And they agreed to those terms. And then she found out that they had canceled the plans at Oak Ridge, the mayor had, and they continued building the single tomb memorial downtown. And you just you're gobsmacked by this. You're like, I'm sorry, the former first
I
lady
know, I
has
know.
decided. And she then used all the leverage she had, but the biggest card she held, and they knew it, was that she said, if you don't stop this immediately, and if my husband isn't immediately brought to Oak Ridge, I will move the body back to Washington. And she knew, in a fight between Oak Ridge and Springfield, they thought they were winning that because they built it and they thought, well, let's just, get him here and then we'll get him in there and we own him.
Oh, they had the
But
whole damn thing even chiseled. I mean, they had the tomb labeled, I think, even.
they did. They
Yeah.
had it all. It was, and then they wanted her. This is my favorite part, and this is extremely sophisticated. They said, okay, but why don't we? Oak Ridge isn't quite ready, so why don't we just put him in here while Oak Ridge is getting ready? And she had the presence of mind to
Hmm.
understand that once he was in that downtown tomb, he
Yep.
was never going to leave there.
That's right.
She said, absolutely not. And she, she prevailed.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, and she had every right to prevail, but it took
She,
a lot of energy.
I mean, she was such a smart woman. I mean, for,
Brilliant.
for being crazy, she was so intelligent, and she worked
Correct.
these things through all by herself. Usually with a tremendous opposition and opprobrium,
Right.
and she did it in spite of everybody. And that
She
is
didn't care. She
no.
blocked out. She lost the whole community in Springfield, but she just didn't care. And she said in one of her letters to the governor, she said something to the effect of, for in years to come, tourists from around the globe will come and go and see. I have to get the right quote, but something to the effect, it'll be visited by tourists and visitors, esteemed visitors from all over the globe will come to Oak Ridge and honor Abraham Lincoln. And do you know that that cemetery
Mm,
is only second in visits globally to Arlington National Cemetery?
really
So she was totally right. I mean,
on target. Yeah,
she had a sense of those things.
and she knew if they were all there, then they would all be receiving all the people. I mean, in
Correct.
other words, the children and the family. I mean,
Correct. I think
this,
Robert might have, Margaret's
oh,
wife decided to bury him at Arlington, which was
well,
fine.
just as well. Well, never mind. Yeah, never
Right.
mind.
Right. I agree. Never
Robert.
mind, Robert. Right.
No, but there were also so many interesting people who sort of cross your pages. The Myra Bradwell, for example.
Yeah, she was a brilliant lawyer
She
who,
used to, the
best
one
lawyer.
who.
Right. Go
No,
ahead.
you go ahead. No, you tell the
Well,
story.
she reached out. Myra and her husband, James Bradwell, were two very prominent attorneys in Chicago, and that's who Mary reached out to. James was a judge, and Myra was just a brilliant lawyer who started this newsletter that everyone in the state read but Myra couldn't get admitted to the bar because
Mhm.
she was a woman, which is just extraordinary. And Myra, James, and Mary came up with this plan, and it was just a brilliant plan. I mean, they did it by public pressure. I mean, they brought a very high profile reporter out to the sanitarium when nobody was there.
Mhm.
They wrote editorials, they wrote letters, and Robert was just missing all this. He was like in New Hampshire, and the director of the facility saw the boom being lowered, and he was writing to Robert saying, this is happening and that's happening. And Robert's writing these letters. He's so out of touch, and he's saying, but by no, do not let her out. Do not let patient out. Do not, and don't let unauthorized people come see her. And finally,
Yeah, the
the guy.
horse has left out. The carriage has left the
Right,
whatever.
exactly. The train has left the
Yeah,
station, and
yeah,
because the guy is running, the doctor is running an elite a sanitarium for elite women,
right.
and he's sitting there thinking, I can't be running a prison here because the publicity got so bad. And he finally writes a letter to Robert, and he said, I think your mother's doing really well. We should just let her go visit her sister.
I know it's fantastic. It is so funny. I mean, there are moments of hilarity in this book. I must say, which is helpful because it's so sad. It's so tragic what was done to her, and her pluckiness in facing it down and coming back each time, rising up and say, "Okay, I'll try it this way, then I'll try it that way." It is so
Well, she was
brave.
manic. I mean, she was manic
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think it's called bipolar today. It would
That's
be
right.
manic depression. Um,
Yeah,
but she clearly was, but and I also think she had acute anxiety. But all of this could have been, if she had lived today, as you say, all of this could have been treated. I mean, she would have
sure.
been on some medications, as half the world is. She would have had talk therapy.
Yeah.
She would have, she would have been, and she would have had a presidential staff that protected her
Yeah.
instead of tried to undercut her at every turn.
My God, she didn't even have an allowance, really, and not a sizable one, not anything that was commensurate to her stature.
No,
Um,
not at all. And his friend David Davis, after Lincoln died, I believe he dragged his feet. I think that estate should have been settled within a year, and instead he put her on such a tight financial leash. She didn't have enough money to buy a house,
mhm.
um,
God,
and for over 2 years. And
oh, that's
it wasn't,
outrageous.
it was terrible. And it wasn't until she went to sell her clothes in New York, which, by the way, I didn't think was that big a deal, but it got horrible press. And her son had a mental breakdown over it. Felt so humiliated. And then lo and behold, the estate gets settled like 2 weeks later.
But nobody made a fuss when Jackie Kennedy Onassis's stuff was put on,
Exactly.
on what is it? What was it, Sotheby's or I
I
can't
think it
remember.
was Sotheby's. I think it
Yeah,
was Sotheby's.
yeah. I mean, no, no, no.
Nobody made a fuss at all. People applauded it.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just because it was Mary.
That's right. It, and they went. It went. It was there was also, I think, something that was involved at some level because her family had been very split. Her the Todds and
Right.
I think seven of her brothers and brothers-in-law were Confederate. Um, so so
Correct.
so she was perceived as not quite, as we said earlier, trustable by anybody.
Correct. That's right.
And then women, of course, were not trustable. We know that. And 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 so the combination of all these things made it impossible for her to be genuinely liked. And in a sense, nobody, I don't think, I'm trying to think now. I don't think until Eleanor Roosevelt was any first lady really like, well, I suppose Edith Wilson ran the country, but um
Yeah, right. No, I think, look, I could think we can say this, she, up until her own time, nobody got the press coverage that Mary Todd Lincoln got. I mean, first ladies were afterthoughts.
yeah.
Um, but some of the publicity was positive in the beginning. All these people went to Springfield, and when he first got elected, and those initial stories were quite favorable. But it wasn't long before they thought she had too much power, and she actually, she did have influence on Lincoln, but he was in charge. I mean, he was a brilliant strategist, tactician. And some of the men, as he won and got to the White House, they believed that, that she was, they practically accused her of controlling patronage, which was very funny because Lincoln controlled patronage.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, some of the letters that you find now about them saying she's got her hands all over this stuff and this is an embarrassment. And I
Mm.
think he did listen to some of her suggestions and in appointing people, but Lincoln was totally in control of
And some
patronage.
of her suggestions were very good suggestions.
They were.
So what was the problem? No, it just was not in line with reality. That's the only problem. I mean, her suggestions, um, her fashions, her friends, her correspondences, and her lobbying were way out of line.
Well, they were
Uh,
outside the envelope for the times, that's
that's
for
right.
sure.
That's right.
I mean, she was spending a lot. She was a compulsive shopper, and now we know that that's a form of addiction,
Yeah.
and it's a diagnostic category now. But she was, but again, now it's very clear why people shop so much. It fills a
Hmm.
hole.
Of course.
Um, and she just couldn't stop. And it was interesting when I started researching this, she found when she had to start paying the piper, some of the boxes weren't even opened. I mean, she bought so
Uh,
much jewelry at Galt's here in DC. And when he died and she was in debt, they found that some of those items were never opened and Galt's took them back.
mm.
Um, so and then later on too, way after he died, they would find boxes in her closet. She'd buy curtains that she didn't need, but it was just the act of the buy.
Buying, yeah, accumulating and
Right. The
adding to her.
empowerment of giving your money and getting a
Yeah.
product and people
Yeah.
paying attention to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how she filled that hole in her
Yeah.
heart.
But there also were real holes by Union soldiers and hospitalized people
Oh,
and poor people that
absolutely.
she really really addressed. I mean, she was not just a on Thanksgiving let's go and make a turkey for them and turn around and come back home.
No, for a while there, she went every day,
That's
and
right.
there is some coverage of it, but not as much as there should have been. She didn't want to bring a reporter with her. She declined that, but it should have been covered more. I mean, because she was not only tending to them, she was raising money for them.
Hmm.
She was sending over gifts from the White House, and she would go to all the hospitals. I mean, this went on for years,
Yeah.
mostly in Washington, but some in New York.
Yeah. Yeah. and 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 children as well. I mean, not only her own children, but all the children in the neighborhood. I mean,
Right, when they were younger, yeah, she
yeah,
took
when they were
everybody
young, she took everybody in. She saw herself as a very um, generous and largesse-filled woman, and she was,
in. She
and
was a mom. She saw herself as a mom
that's
first.
right, that's right.
And the kids, and those are, you hit on something. A lot of those narratives weren't told early on. I mean, her house was open. I mean, the kids loved to come. She kept the cookie jar filled with
All
cookies
right,
and donuts. And Lincoln, too, would pile kids in the wagon and go fishing with them. And a lot of that got left out of the early narratives of her. People would just pick at her and only talk about again, she was very anxious. And so if one of the kids was missing, she would get hysterical and send somebody to go get her husband from work.
all right.
And somehow that's the story. Those are the stories they got told, and not the stories of the kindness and the generosity.
Yeah. No, and the kindness and the generosity is epidemic. I mean, it's everywhere. It's Lincoln was no fool for choosing her. Um,
That's right. He knew who he married to, by the way.
that's right.
There's no question. He knew she was volatile and he knew she was impulsive. He knew who he married.
That's right. And who he married stood him in good standing. I mean,
It did.
actually, because she was a real backer. I mean, there's no question that her loyalty to him and her
100%.
absolutely, and then some. I mean, there was nothing at all that she was wanting in where he was concerned. And she was there for him. I have to say this to you too, because I congratulate you on you have walked a line in this, and I'm a feminist and I'm a writer, and it's not an easy line to walk, because you have picked a subject for a character, a major character, who isn't a hidebound feminist. I mean, in a sense, if you taken on Stanton or Anthony or anybody else of that whole period, it would have been easier. Not that they were easy, but you know what I mean. Uh, but this is really really hard, and to thread this needle, as you say, to walk this tightrope between showing her as the intelligent woman demanding and insisting on having real agency,
Exactly. Yeah.
real agency, and insisting on it, and following through on it, and doing good with it, and her wifehood and her motherhood, and to keep them all in balance like plates in the air is no small thing, and I cannot praise you enough. I mean, I just
Oh, that's so nice of you. Thank you.
An Inconvenient Widow, the torment, trial, and triumph of Mary Todd Lincoln. Ah, Lois Romano. Are you on book tour? Are you traveling?
Soon. The book doesn't come out till May 19th. So I am
Ah,
speaking to a Lincoln Scholars Forum next week, and then it'll start. Everything else will kick in a couple of weeks after that.
oh, that's fantastic.
It's exciting. Yeah,
And
I'm excited.
I noticed that John Meacham gave it a quote, and I love him.
He did, and Doris Kearns Goodwin, which was
And
lovely.
yes, yeah, no, this is wonderful. Um, it's so sad. She had this brief friendship with Sarah Bernhardt, which I was fascinated to read about. But
She met her on a boat.
that's right. Yeah, she met her on a boat and confided in her and so forth. But I was longing for some encounter where she would meet with Stanton or Anthony or any of the earlier women.
Yeah, no, I don't think she ever did.
No,
Although Stanton wrote an op-ed she had a newsletter, a suffrage newsletter, and when there was a big fight about whether Mary should get a pension, Stanton advocated for her.
really.
Yes, she did.
So this was during the days of the Revolution being published then.
Yeah, and she said we should just give it to her. Her husband was the commander in chief, which was very kind.
Yeah, but it was also very, I mean, it was very
It
reasonable.
was crazy that they fought it. It was just
This
crazy.
and they fought it because it was her, you know.
Right. Let me just say this about it. It was an accomplishment that she got that done because subsequently, all presidential widows now get some kind of stipend, and it
Mhm.
was because of her that happened. So
Yeah,
that was something that she accomplished.
yeah. Well, she accomplished quite a bit, and she survived her family. Ah, she survived her slings and arrows of outrageous attack, and did so with grace. In fact, I mean, oh, I cried a number of times. I just was so sad.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and
I
I
appreciate
got
you reading it.
and I got so furious too. I mean, how dare he? Oh my God, he didn't do that. He did. Oh, Robert, how could you do this? Um, and but not Lincoln. Lincoln.
No,
He,
Lincoln loved her. I
yeah,
mean, I know a lot of people like to say he didn't, but he did.
no, and it's very clear that he did. It's very clear. Ah, well, bravo, and thank you for this wonderful book, An Inconvenient Widow. She was definitely inconvenient to
Thank
them.
you, Robin. I appreciate it.
It's the torment, the trial, and the triumph of Mary Todd Lincoln, and it is absolutely wonderful. And I thank you for having written it and taking the time and the effort. It's a huge, but massive amount of research that you've done, and you've done it superbly. So I'm very grateful. Thank you, and thank you for being with us.
Oh, and thank you for having me. This was a great, interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it.
We have to take another quick break here, but don't go anywhere because I'll be right back. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Be alert. Stay alert. The rising tide of digital violence that Ethiopian women activists and feminists face is exportable. And those are fighting words. This is from a piece written by Aisha Down that ran in the March 31st issue of The Guardian. These are excerpts that I will read. Yordanos Beziva, an Ethiopian women's rights activist, had faced online threats for years of acid attacks, gang rape, and death. She tried her best to ignore the abuse as she continued her advocacy work. But in 2025, the threats became more menacing. In April, an anonymous Telegram group with 6,000 subscribers organized an effort to track down her location. They shared deepfakes of her, nude images and videos. The following month, a stranger started to film her in the streets, calling her by her social media handle. In summer, thieves broke into her house and stole her laptop. Soon after, her Telegram account was hacked, and her private photos and messages circulated on social media. The perpetrators later circulated her address, she says, demanding that she be found and executed. Women's rights activist Yordanos Beziba has not returned to Ethiopia since August. That's when she left for a fellowship for human rights defenders. It's too dangerous to come back. I've been forced to remain outside my own country in order to protect my safety and continue my work. Beziba is one of a small but growing number of feminists and women's rights defenders who have left Ethiopia over the past 2 years as online violence has become all-pervasive and uncontrolled. 3 years after Facebook was accused of allowing hate speech to spread unchecked in Ethiopia, amid genocidal violence against ethnic Tigrayans during the Civil War, claims rejected by Meta. Social media inciters in Ethiopia have found a new target: women online. This is called Technology-Facilitated Gender-Based Violence, TFGBV. And Maya Mikisir, the sister of Lila Misikir, another activist who has fled the country, says, if you self-describe as a feminist, you become a target, as that word is associated nowadays with anti-Ethiopian values and traditions against the core family unit. Feminists are, quote, dehumanized. Their lives are unvalued, says an Ethiopian women's rights activist who demanded not to be identified, fearing that she too would become a target of online abuse. To a loose ecosystem of conservative influencers and a growing manosphere, women who speak out about gender-based violence are, quote, against Ethiopian identity and hence must be exterminated. That's what the activist says. The Guardian spoke with Beziba and Maya Misikir, as well as to human rights defenders in Ethiopia and abroad. Several asked to remain anonymous, fearing that calling attention to themselves would invite threats. They described a world in which extreme online abuse has become rampant and normalized. The war in Tigray, wherein mass rape, sexual slavery, and sexual torture of women and children by Ethiopian and Eritrean soldiers took place, has shaped an online environment in which calling for feminists to be killed is unremarkable. Sexual violence was weaponized as a form of domination, says the anonymous activist. It's created a sense of normalization even in other regions of the country where the war has not happened. Research by the Center for Information Resilience, CIR, bears out the scale of online gendered abuse in Ethiopia. Its 2024 report, Silence, Shamed, and Threatened, found that technology-facilitated gender-based violence has become normalized to the point of invisibility and is a daily occurrence with severe offline impacts, including psychological harm, physical assault, and arrests. As part of a 4-year project, CIR conducted in-depth interviews with 14 Ethiopian women who were active online and held public roles. They described how being humiliated, shamed, and sexualized online made them feel silenced or forced them to withdraw from social media. No platform felt safe, the women said. In another 2024 study, the CIR analyzed gendered hate speech in 4 languages: Amharic, Afan Oromo, Tigrinya, and English, to gain insight into the nature of TFGBV in Ethiopia, where lack of data is one of the main barriers to addressing the problem. Its findings are designed to raise awareness of the issue, particularly within government institutions, which activists say are failing to protect women and girls from online assaults or to hold perpetrators accountable. I don't think the government is much concerned about online harassment. It is barely a government agenda. So says Befekedu Hailu, an Ethiopian civil society leader and former director of Ethiopia's Center for the Advancement of Rights and Democracy. I have never come across any government action following any tech-facilitated, gender-based violence. Bezebi says the online platforms that enable the violence do little about it. Even though they claim to have all these community guidelines, tech platforms never respond, not to reports, to claims, or even appeals. In 2023, Laila Misikir, along with a feminist collective called Setaset Power, started a campaign called My Whistle, My Voice, encouraging women to stand up against street harassment. As a part of this campaign, they urged their followers to carry red whistles and blow on them if they were catcalled. Maya says it was about breaking the shame, the taboo on one hand for something that another person is doing to me, but also at the same time bringing in other women, other people, as witnesses and as people accountable to the safety of women. For a time, says Maya, as a part of Setaset, Layla had worked for years to raise awareness about sexual violence. But then the tenor of the online harassment changed. A prominent TikTok influencer began to make videos about Layla, saying she was gay and screenshotting photos indicating that she had followed queer accounts. In Ethiopia, where homosexuality is illegal, members of the LGBT community have been attacked in public after being outed. It really just escalated. The online mob began to search for Layla's home address. She debated waiting for the furor to die down, but in November of 24, she left the country. The wave of online campaigns targeting feminists in particular began in 2023, and these were followed by targeted harassment against individuals, not all of whom had a public profile. But the Ethiopian activist, who wished to remain anonymous, says she recalls at least 3 large campaigns against feminists in recent years. The director of an organization focused on Ethiopian youth says the violence has led to women being increasingly pushed out of public spaces. But, she says, in the aftermath of a genocidal war, society is failing to take the consequences of online abuse seriously. People don't think it's a problem. People don't think it's a problem. They consider it a luxury thing. They don't think people are actually getting assaulted or socially traumatized or psychologically affected. I feel very burnt out, and I wanted to leave the country for a while. Having spent a lot of time online with so much hate speech, so much violence targeted against you and people very close to you, I felt very burned out. This can be exported unless we stop it now. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.